ASOIAF, as Homelander in Game of Thrones Chapter 1, only man in the sky, the only man in the sky somewhere in the north, beyond the wall, the crisp cold breeze had welcomed Mark like an old divorced woman with cats. Ooh, what the fuck was in that vodka? He remembered being in a park drowning in his sorrows after being cucked by his best friend. One step from jumping of a bridge, but that was a French life. Miserable existence. A sudden bolt woke him from his stupor. Where the flying fuck am I? He looked around. He was surrounded by snow as far as the sky could see, but stranger still was the fact that he was naked and felt nothing. This place was colder than his stepmom. He should be dead, but that was the least of his concerns. Where the hell am I? As he looked around, a sudden whiplash hit him like he had been slapped from the greatest, most wettest dream he was having. Ah, what the fuck? Mark screamed. His senses were overloading. A sharp pain went through his eyes as though they had been pepper sprayed. A loud bang went through his skull. The snowstorm had become louder and louder and louder until it felt as if his head was going to explode. Stop, what's happening? I said stop it. He screamed, but it wasn't ordinary, it was loud. Echoes escaped his mouth. 200 meters of snow had been cleared around him, and the world went dead silent. His overloading five senses had calmed. The world seemed to freeze, and quick empty silence replaced the loud voices. What just happened? He pinched himself to see it was true. It was. Am I mad or am I deaf or maybe? Calmed himself, and his senses gradually came back. He was in a snowstorm, but only the vast expanse of cold and the wind was truly affecting him. The cold, which should have frozen any man, didn't bother him. As he looked around, he realized what he had done. Did I just super scream? The excitement overtook his fear. Superpowers? Huh, I have superpowers. Just amidst the revelation, he looked at his naked self. This wasn't him. He didn't have sucked killer muscles. Maybe the power had enhanced his physique like in that Spider-Man movie, but he didn't have blonde hair, neither a hog of a cock. That didn't matter, he decided. First order of business is to leave this place. He looked around, really looked. Just then his eyesight magnified, like looking through a binocular, but more HD. He could now see the forest a few miles away through the storm. Wait, super scream. Supervision and super senses, only few character I know of all that. Am I a Superman or, wait, blonde, oh my god, am I the Homelander so I can fly? He surmised. The powers had made all curiosity and dread vanish. No point in questioning anymore. He was chosen. Mark lowered himself, preparing for a high jump. His large calves tightened, shaking the ground beneath. Homelander didn't have a physique this Greek goddess, and he took off. The earth beneath tore open. A massive explosion of mud and dust greeted Mark goodbye. He was tearing through the clouds. A shockwave followed behind. This was the most exhilarating he had ever felt. He was a boring dude before. Now he would take that traitor Anthony and that whore allies and give them a tour of the sun. Then he halted suddenly. He had felt something. A shiver went down his spine. Something was off about the air. It felt dead. A feeling that was not familiar to any of his five senses. He looked below to the small world beneath him. Endless expanse of thick snow. Then he heard it. A scream, someone weeping in the woods a few miles away. And he heard a screech. It was violent and icy, unlike any sound he had heard before. Terrible and ugly. So he decided to investigate. He was practically a god now, and perhaps chosen for a reason. He flew, and he flew quick. The forest miles away was beneath him in just 10 seconds flat. The sounds were clear now, and they were visible too. There were ice demons surrounding men wearing black robes. He recognized them. These things were the fucking whites and his dead. The white had just cut off a man's head, while the man in black just watched in pure horror. It reminded him of when he caught his dad cheating. Mark had realized he was in Game of Thrones, as Homelander, during the beginning of the Season 1 Episode 1. I guess bro, I ain't gonna question anything. There were then zombies and all, but that didn't matter. He was Homelander. It was like putting a nuke against a coughing baby. Maybe he was even stronger than Homelander. John hadn't showed he could super scream 200 meters of snow away, or even break the earth while taking off. He could help the poor kid, interact with the main characters, and save the world. Realistically, he could find the Night King now and end it. But that would be so utterly boring. Yes, he would save the world. B, he would enjoy himself while doing it. Let the dead grow and let them try. Now just start being the God of Planetos. And he descended as the white moved towards Will. Hey there fellas, he greeted the insects below him. The white looked up. A sudden expression of shock passed through him. As did the other walkers. Will had become so pale he might be confused as a walker himself. With a soft thud, Mark landed on the snowy ground. The panic on the white felt good. Mark was a coward in his previous life, never admired and never feared, but now he truly understood the pleasure. The power and the feeling of undeniable superiority was addictive. You know, friend, it's very rude to cut a man's head off. Mark spoke in a deep masculine voice. He sounded sexy right now. The white stared for a few moments longer before letting out a screech. There was also fear in it now. It held its strange sword in his hands, pointing it at Mark. Then he threw it. A loud crack was heard as the sword crumbled under the contact of Mark's bare chest. The white stumbled back, but Mark caught up instantaneously. He grabbed the monster by the neck and crushed it. It was easier than he thought, like crumbling paper. And this was a world-ending threat. Curiously, the others began fleeing. Shouldn't they die now? Their master is dead, or it isn't him. Mark concentrated his eyes, and a warm feeling came rushing through. Lasers erupted from his two eyes like a rays of light, dark crimson and cooler. The dead fell quick, erased to ash, all except two who were only cut in half. Alive still. He figured he would need them as proof or at least as a good excuse to conquer this world if he felt like it. Ignoring the dead and the trees he had scorched, he turned to look at Will. The poor thing had wet himself and was kneeling, muttering prayers. He floated over to the kid. "Will, you are safe now," he said, smiling gently. Chapter 2 I am Helios, the sun god. Will, brother of the watch. POV. Will, you are safe now. There were no words to describe what I had just seen. I had seen the creatures made of ice, these demons which had slain the other two of my brothers so effortlessly. I was terrified beyond words. Just then a man, naked and blonde-haired and tall, with a body of a maiden's darkest fantasy and a face more beautiful than I had ever seen, descend from the sky. He was faster than my eyes could follow when he killed the demon. Then he shot fire out of his eyes, eviscerating the monstrosities like they were nothing. Then he floated towards me, then told me he was safe. I didn't believe it, but I looked at him. Who or why? Lord, I could barely muster. How did he even know my name? The man smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. You may know me as Helios. He landed softly on the ground, unaffected by the cold. No, you're scared, but now we must act. I will explain myself as we travel to the wall. Your world is in terrible danger and we must do something about it. What? Danger? What was this? Man, you just saw it and the world must know of it, but before that I shall cremate your companions. I hope you don't mind if I take their clothes for myself in the process, and I shall explain to you everything on the way. Before I could blink, the bodies were already turned to ash, and the man was wearing the clothes of Sir Royce now, though they barely fit him. He then took bag from the horses, emptied the food and put the vile monstrosities in them, tying them to his back and climbing Sir Royce's horse. Gods, what was he? It had been an hour into our journey back before I finally spoke up. Are you a god? I barely mustered. The man just smiled, a quick, genuine smile filled with amusement. What I heard next was the most insane thing a man could ever hear. Mark POV. Oh Lord, seeing this kid eat up my fake origin story was so damn funny. I told him I was a god of war and sun. I had combined the mythologies of my world to cook up a perfect tale. I told his that the Earth was one of 9 worlds under the Aesir's/God's protection, and Odin was my father and the All-Father. I recounted the story of Thor from the Marvel movies. How I was banished for trying to start a war with the dark gods of darkness, the ones who created the White Walkers. I told him of some utter bullshit about Loki and Lucifer, and the twink ate it right up. So this evil god Lucifer attempted to overthrow Odin by feeding the apple of knowledge to Eve, for which you banished him. Will question, the terror had not left his face. A look of a 10-year-old learning the sun was going to explode, maybe just a little more understandable. And Lucifer's deed is why hell exists, though it is not eternal but more like a temporary punishment. I spoke. Those were the days of my youth, good times. How old are you, O Lord? Will asked, his entire belief shaken to the core. I had also told him the old god stress were his eyes on the mortal realm, and the 7 were just a faith twisted by Loki for bringing more chaos onto the world. Just 15,000 years old. The lie came easily and made Will stop dead in his tracks. You are that old? He asked, looking around. I am an Aesir. Well, I shall live forever until the great Ragnarok comes and swallows me whole and the world begins again, completely new. The sheer look of his was alone worth 1,000 lying whores. But that's enough knowledge, far more than you need, and remember, not a soul can know my truth. Should the great evil notice me in my weakened state alone, this world is doomed. Never, Lord, I swear by Odin. Wall is close ahead, and I figure your welcome won't be a warm one, and when they ask, tell them I am a foreign lord stranded here after a storm destroyed my ship on a voyage to White Harbor. The next hour was a silent one, with the twink contemplating his entire life. Reminds me of me when I lost her to my best friend. Well, they're lucky I have been teleported by some great power here. But was I really such a loser? Or did Big G up there finally decided to compensate me for my misery? Well, anyway, flying over and start blasting the 7 kingdoms to kingdom fuck was boring, and while this was a shitty place, I would be something more here. And I would like that. Being the king of sewers is better than being a servant in a mansion. I suppose this power is very addictive and I can't wait to fuck up the world. Besides, so many women to take, Marjorie, Danny, and well, that's it. It would be creepy if I, according to my new mate, will look his age, so like fresh out of high school legal. As our humble party of 4 made its way to the wall, we were greeted by Sir Alizar Thorn and Q-Horan Halfhand. As for the others, well, who gives a shit? What are you doing wearing Royce's armor and riding his steed? Well, where are the other 2? Alizar spoke, hand drawn to his sword hilt. Well, let's let him have it. Can't really be mad at reasonable questions. They died, Lord. That was a blow to the motley crew, but we'll hear continued before anyone interrupted this. Man, Lord Helios of the across the narrow sea saved my life before I too could die. Geez, great going, asshole, emphasizing on all the things you shouldn't say. Anyway, a lord from the narrow sea here. He saved you from the wildings and stole from Royce's corpse, Alizar said smugly. He no longer had need of it. He is at rest, fought bravely, but it was not the wildlings he fought, I explained, grabbing the attention of the whole crew. Then what killed them? Q-Horan questioned. His posture was rigid, and beneath that fur his heart was beating a little faster. Ah, so this cunt already suspected it, as if right on the bags in which I carried the dead freaks began moving. The surrounding went deathly silent. And Q-Horan's heartbeat, all their heartbeats went crazy fast as a loud icy screech broke the damn silence. Chapter 3, The Black Brothers' Peril at Castle Balk. What in the 7HELLS is that? OGODS help us all, how are these things alive? Seeing the Black brothers' panicked faces was a fun sight. It was so rare to see men this terrified. The entire watch had been gathered and the fear had spread like wildfire amongst the night's watchmen, and these were meant to be the greatest line of defense against a potential world-ending threat. But the blame was of the so-called noble lords who never took the wall seriously in the first place. Who in their right mind thinks that a 700-foot wall of ice, spreading across 300 miles and 19 castles are just built to keep out savages? Had I been the king, I would have at least tried to further explore the lands of always. Wintermark had thought this. Which king wouldn't want to at least not explore foreign lands or, well, have it explored? In a world where dragons and cursed lands like Valyria exist, ice zombies sound reasonable, but alas, people are fucking stupid. What is this, stranger? Jeor Mormont asked, his voice surprisingly stable compared to the sheer adrenaline in his blood. Yug, that stinks, Mark thought before speaking. You know what this is, so let's all calm down and start planning. They were all looking at him now, scared and accusedly, especially Alizer. Mark had expected fingers to be pointed at him. People in this world weren't self-aware for shit. You were one of our own dead brother's clothes and bring this thing at our doorstep and then tell us to calm down. It was Bajin Stark who spoke, much calmer than the others. Much like Qhorin, he too was aware the. Mark surmised this was expected. Well, you are welcome. Mark spoke with a calm voice and a barely noticeable smirk. The others looked dumbfounded, the sheer lack of panic on Mark's face unsettling many. Welcome for what? Bringing this thing here, Alizer uttered now. Gods, this is fun. Welcome for my contribution is potentially saving the world, friend. There lies a threat beyond the wall that has begun to rise, and it wishes to extinguish all life. Any other day this would be just a wet nurse's tale, but now the proof lies ahead you now. And once you show any corpse to the lords down south, you can expect the aid you need to save the world, brothers. Mark's words of logic finally calmed the room. The temperature had cooled down, the sheer fear had heated the room quite a bit. Only Mark noticed it. These damn powers are so damn cool, though. What's the situation really? Had he transmigrated after death or what? Did he have a system? And how had he unlocked his powers so quickly? Everyone get back to work. Qhorin and Yoren put the things in the cell and watch over it. Lord Helios, come with me. They all had assumed he was a noble, perhaps the killer looks. Mark had noticed how much taller to everyone he was. He followed behind the group to Jeor's private quarters. Benjen, Eamon and Alizer had followed him. He then had to explain the whole backstory of a lost lord again, and no one believed it. At least they aren't that stupid. Mark hadn't bothered to correct his story. That wasn't the bigger issue here. And what about the guard and Weimer? Benjen asked, though he had already know the answer. I cremated them as was right, Mark answered. They would have turned into the dead things back there if I hadn't, Mark explained further, looking at their angry expression. So, what do we do next? He asked as Alizer frowned. Is it we already? Wearing Weimer's clothes don't make you one of us, foreigner. Mark could only internally face palm at this dude. Bro just saw ice zombies and a foreigner was his concern. It's WE because these things kill without judgment. We are all at risk here. The lie came easily. Only the regular dudes were at risk, not him. We have 2 corpses, let's take one back to Winterfell, Mark had said. It was terribly funny seeing Theses' men take offense to his words. These men here thought less with their brains and more with their pride. A foreigner talking like a friend set them off, but in the end they saw reason. It was decided that Benjen would go off to Winterfell. They had asked me to accompany him as well, for I was the one who bought the thing south in the first place, but I had refused. The 7 kingdoms could wait. He knew that this would probably change everything and the War of the 5 Kings may not happen at all. But that was beside the point, Mark thought to himself. The reality is laid bare. I have all the power in the world and it would be a waste of time to hold himself back to interact with the main cast. Why not travel and conquer Essos while Westeros bothers about this threat? Mark knew it would be easy enough. He was a god now. And it would be easier to make the Essosi slaves his worshippers. All he had to do was fly down and be the one saving them, like Caesar was going to be the god that Homelander wanted to be but failed miserably. But that was a shitty ending and a super world. What's stopping him here? With that he had requested a horse and some food to find a ship and go back to his presumed home, or so he told them. He had to be believable. Now he would depart tomorrow to White Harbor, that's what he told them at least. He actually wished to head south to the Reach. Mark needed friends and he couldn't be bothered to waste his breath with someone he did not know in the story. He also needed intelligent friends to make his kingdom. He remembered how he did not approve Daenerys as a queen because she failed to subdue the slavers even with all the advantages. But he didn't know jack about ruling either, so he decided he would make a cert helpless fat boy from the Reach an ally. Samwell Tarly was trustworthy enough, good head and well fun to hang around. He might also find a certain drunk imp to join up too. All he had to do was give them the same old tale of gods and whatever and they would be in his pockets. These 2 men could be great in ruling but no one ever gave a try. Men who never were acknowledged. Now if a god acknowledged them and asked them to join a greater calling they would, without a shadow of a doubt. At least that's what I think, Mark muttered. The plan was made. He would collect his new friends and then find something valuable to buy all the Unsullied. Then it would be smooth sailing from there. With that he went to sleep. The next morning, Castle Black, "Are you truly leaving us, Lord?" Will asked. The poor thing was practically a devoted worshipper now. And hearing the new god he met leave the palace at a crucial moment scared him to no end. "Fret not, Will, this saga has only begun, and I am sure Odin has banished me here to test me. The dead will not march for some time now, and until then there are other duties I must tend to. This world of man has been turned into a cruel and evil place. There are mortals crueler than many demons I know." I spoke to him, this was genuine. Will was a good kid, and this world's was absolutely shitty, like top 10 worst places to live ever. "When next we meet, I shall have a crown on my head and the mortal whirls at my heel. Praise Odin the All-Father for sending me to you, and fight brave and fight hard. You are a good kid and the enemy is death. Forget about the consequences now and do your duty. And if you pass, we shall meet again in Valhalla." Will was emotional, almost weeping like babe separating from his mother. But there was now a firm resolve in his eyes, a purpose that was not there before. Perhaps Mark had ignited the fire in him. Will was a nobody from nowhere, looked down by all the world, but now he had met a god that had put faith in him to protect and sold him a purpose he lacked in life. Most people here were without pupils and they were empty. This was such a world after all. Mark can't help but be shaken at the newfound devotion in Will's eyes. They had met yesterday and now he looked as though he would die at Mark's singular command. This fanatic loyalty was more scary than it had the right to be. No wonder some could so easily get drunk by power. Mark had thought of Melisandre, the Red Witch, just then. She too had preached a religion, and she had men who once went to Seps, burned Septons alive, calling them infidels, all within a year's time no less. But she was just a witch, a woman good with nothing but teats. One word from her mouth should send red signals all over the body. Then Mark thought of the High Sparrow. He too had commanded such loyalty, for he told people what they always wanted to hear. Presented himself as the people's voice. Mark was now also going to do just that. He was going to bring liberty to desperate people's lives, and he was going to be a symbol of hope in this terrible world. But Mark had just realized people who think they are doing the right thing without believing that they are without fault are often the worst types of people. Samwell and Tyrion could be the voice of reason then. It was a good thing, Mark had thought off, but he realized in that one moment that the entire world would bend to his will without a fight. And should he ever loose it here, no one could ever hope to stop him, so he must tread very carefully. Just now his ego has consumed him while dealing with the Night's Watchman. That must not happen again. Mark's plan for world's conquest was complete and now he must walk the path. With this in mind he rode out, looking back one final time to Will and to Castle Black. He would be the hero this world so desperately needed. Chapter 4, A Humble Beginning. Mole's Town. It had been a day's ride. Mark hated it in its entirety. The main purpose of this whole trouble was his plan to keep a low profile. Mark had to make everything realistic to the Night's Watchmen. It was lucky enough that they let him go after he brought a white to their doors. Mark had doubts that it was such because they were suspicious. Who wouldn't doubt such an outlandish story? But he believed he was lucky he did not have to kill everyone in Castle Black. They had also been generous enough to give him food and a horse when he asked, but this was only to pretend to be normal. He could have flown after leaving the horse in the forest and throwing away the food. The food tastes like absolute shit, not gonna lie, but he had grown up with enough manners to absolutely not throw away food even if he could sustain without it, which he could. The bread was hard and downright inedible. Have these dudes never heard of sugar? The beef was even worse. Just a big lump of stone with some salt to keep is tolerable. His heat vision had made it work, however. The journey to this town was to sell the horse for some coin and eventually buy some proper clothes. He was not heartless enough to abandon his adorable horse. It was difficult to ride as he never learnt, but he managed. Yoren definitely had grown suspicious when he saw Mark struggle with the horse. After all, what noble would not know horse riding? It did not make enough sense as to why they let him go. But the noble Gior had said that they cannot force a free man to stay. HMH, the same noble Lord Commander who tolerated a man who kills his own sons and fucks his daughter, sit, was sometimes annoying how these honorable men were sometimes so one-sided. But they were the best of this world. Any transmigrator with sense would pray to the gods above that he was either teleported in a big city in Westeros or the domain of the Starks. Winter incoming, gods there were so fucking cool, except Sansa and Bran though, they were lame. Mark spoke, trying to fill the silence of the journey with noise. He had wanted to practice his powers more. How strong was he? And how fast? But that could wait. He did not have a transmigrator system telling him shit, so things would be his own way. At Castle Black, Benjen Stark too was preparing to depart to Winterfell with Yoren and Will. The last day had left him at a sheer loss for words, and a sense of despair had entered his mind. The stories were true. By the gods, they were true. Benjen had to show the proof to his brother immediately and perhaps to every lord south of the wall. The world was in danger and its first line of defense was nowhere near enough to stop the dead if they marched. Even with these things cut in half, they had not died, they were not tired, and they were not even bothered. The entirety of Castle Black had a sleepless night, except that stranger who had bought these corpses in the first place. The stranger was not a free folk. He was too well groomed to well spoken, but he was not who he claimed either. There was a confidence in his voice that Benjen had not seen in anyone except the highest lords, but most lords would shit bricks at the sight this Lord Helios of Rome had shown yesterday. He was too detached, too fake even. Benjen had spent enough time with criminals and men to know. But his words were too confident, as if spoken by an actor who was performing on a stage. Benjen still remembered his final words before leaving. "It is time, my lords, for me to leave to find my lost crew, and when I do I shall gather whatever aid I can to save humanity, but I am the spoiled son of a lord so far away he probably doesn't care about the fate of Westeros." Benjen remembered while stiffening at those words. "But I will try, it would be wise to show it to Lord Stark, and remember you guys are the real heroes." His words had felt good. Most only saw the Watch as a place for criminals and outlaws. His words of inspiration had inflated the ego of many. Gior had kept the one walker back to see what could kill it. The other was being loaded in a box. The handsome blonde-haired, blue-eyed foreigner was just as unsettling as the walkers. He had an ego the size of himself. Gior had tried to make him stay, but he had not cared to listen. Benjen had tried to get something out of the will, but his mouth was sealed shut. He said the same things this Helios had said about his origin. Benjen knew Will was hiding something, but maybe the encounter with the dead had left him traumatized. Will had even began to pray to some foreign god named Odin, someone of Helios's faith. Did that man truly have such an affect? This was absolutely not normal behavior. World is going to change a lot the next few moons. Benjen could only think with a heavy sigh at Mole's town. Finding someone to buy a horse was easy enough. In fact, many had come rushing as soon as they heard he was selling. This was a cold and dull place. Livestock had a lot of value here as a result. It was natural, but the biggest issue was the price. Mark, or now Helios as he called himself, had absolutely no idea what price was a horse normally in this world. And a good quality horse no less. Eamon had personally ensured that Helios get the best horse Castle Black had. After all, he had just saved the world, or at least helped greatly. Meister Eamon was low-key adorable. There was something about all's people that had Mark's soft spot. Perhaps it was the innocence. Some had offered 2 gold dragons while others offered 100 silver. What was the economy here? Mark had no idea, but in the end he took 4 golden dragons as the starting amount. He had heard somewhere that 1,000 gold dragons can buy a small castle. This was insane considering Robert Baratheon spent 8,000 gold dragons for the tourney champions alone. Assuming that a horse in the modern world was worth roughly around $5,000, and if 1 gold dragon could buy a horse, then 40,000 gold dragons are roughly equal a mind-boggling sum of $200 million. This must for knocking men of horses with a stick should be a carinal sin. Nah, nobody interjected. That's crazy. Even the Arin Hag bro, none of these guys were good for shit. They all deserve to die. Like, I get that Bobby B does not listen, but damn, at least could have saved some money on the prize. Petter Baelish was not even clever, everybody was just stupid. Completely deserved bankruptcy. It does take a man with an empty purse to understand the value of money. Most of the buyers offered 5 to 6 gold, but eventually he met a guy, a horse seller. Said that he would recognize a war horse of the Night's Watch anywhere. The jerk had asked why would a brother of the Night's Watch sell a horse. The man just could not mind his buousness. But he still offered to buy the horse for 8 gold, and that was the best offer Mark could get from just a handful of buyers here, so he went with it and sold the horse. After some inquiry with the locals, he found out that 1 gold was equal to 210 silver, which was equal to 11,760 coppers, which was the earning of a laborer per year. A proper sword costed that much. Mark needed proper clothes too, but he would not get them in the north. He needed something that looked noble, but for now he just bought commoner clothes which cost a measly 5 copper pennies. Mark, now finally getting away from the sight of the town, thought through about the next step. His plan was to get Samwell and Tyrion to join him to get to Essos. Tyrion would be in King's Landing and Samwell would be in his castle. How would he possibly meet them? Fuck it, we ball. He would fly to King's Landing and see what he could do. If he could earn good gun, then better, or he could steal it from some pompous noble in that shithole. And maybe he would use Tyrion to get to Samwell at his own keep. A dwarf, a fatty, and a god. That's a nice trio. Thus Mark decided that he would deal with this shit later. He could probably feed the imp in a brothel. With the knowledge of a modern man, being confident and convincing was a piece of cake. Also, he had watched enough history movies and kept up with modern politics enough to know how to run a kingdom into a golden age. In theory, at least. He also knew who was trustworthy and who was not in this wretched world. So the next stop would be King's Landing. With that, he took off into the sky. Chapter 5: Treasure in Garbage. Mark Helios Pav. Flying is one of the most desired superpowers. The immaculate feeling of being truly free and floating through the air at high speed would make many wet. And it is fun. But no one fucking tells you about the cloth movement and the lack of safety of your belongings. I had bought peasant clothes. It was just basic functioning clothing from wool. I had to seriously slow down to not ignite it. This would not do at all, and the fucking coins could not bother to be in one place. The location of King's Landing and navigation was a whole another mess. I knew I had to go southeast, and so I did. But the slow pace was killing me. I was probably going only 300 miles an hour, or so I thought. Controls of this powers were still new to me. But being a moralist, I figured I would just learn things along the way. A system would have been real useful right about now. King's Landing was still not in view yet, but the land sacrifice of Westeros made the whole long time worth it. Speaking of which, I wondered if I am flying high enough to not be seen in the sky if anybody looks up. But who cares about that? King's Landing, the capital of the Seven Kingdoms, and a giant heap of trash and people and corruption. What do I know about it? Let's see. The gold cloaks are corrupt, the spies of Varys and Baelish everywhere. The whole place is packed together like tighter than a nun knickers, so overcrowded. Can't land anywhere safe. Thinking about that, I realize I should probably land on the place where Bronn and Jaime used to spar. There was also a desperate need of mine to stay unnoticed, but that would be a problem. I was apparently 6'6" blonde, blue-eyed, muscular, and had a face that can make the fairest, most self-controlled maidens drool in the open. It would be difficult to not go noticed. But speaking of that, Petter Baelish, the master of coin, was stealing from the crown and must have hidden gold, most likely in the brothels of his. I could sneak in at night, be as silent as a whisper during a storm, and steal it, but that might fuck up the timeline, and I need the Seven Kingdoms in utter chaos, so I can be the one saving it, so I will wait till night before landing in King's Landing. Until then, I just have to enjoy the scenery and find a place to land. WNTRFELL, EDDARD Stark's chamber. Are you sure this is true, my love? Catelyn Tully asked her lord husband, who had lost his composure after receiving a raven from Castle Black. It had said that a White Walker, no two White Walkers, had been captured. Benjen was coming to Winterfell with undeniable proof. The raven had arrived just this evening. It was signed by Jeor Mormont and Benjen Stark. Only one man can go crazy at a time, not two, especially not men like Benjen and Jeor. Lord Eddard was thinking. It has Benjen's and Jeor's seal. Benjen comes with proof. He spoke as the color drained from the faces of both Maester Luwin and Catelyn Stark. My lord, this is respectfully insane. There is certainly no way Catelyn had spoke. She was never the one to believe in grumpkins and snarks. She was of the faith of the Seven. It condemned all things magic, and this was something even worse than mere tricks. My lord, you said your brother brings proof of this. Luwin spoke much more understanding, but he too was scared, and Eddard had noticed his trembling fingers despite his attempt to hide them. Benjen does not lie, and neither does Mormont. My brother brings evidence for. He hesitated. He was unaware of what to make of this situation. By all means, all his sense had told him that this was preposterous. A proof would arrive within a fortnight, and he would see for himself whether the world was in danger or Benjen had gone senile. We shall see for ourselves when Benjen comes. Until then, speak of this to no soul. They all agreed to this, deep down not believing this letter still. But time would tell, and their hearts, just living in a state of normacy and bliss that comes from being unaware, were just suddenly made aware. A dread and anticipation had coiled in them. Time will tell indeed. Helios POV. It was finally nightfall as I made my landing in the outskirts of the city. This life was getting boring fast. Everything was so slowly done. It took a whole 3 days to go from the Wall to King's Landing. It would take far longer with companions. My modern world attention span was not built for this. Amazing views only go so far. The dopamine detox was kicking in, and I hated every second of his life, though the powers made up for them. The transmigrators do not really tell you about a real issues, do they? But I was really starting to want a system. It would help a lot. But alas, here we stand. I slowly make my way to the Blackwater Bay, enhancing my super senses to know if anyone is looking. Right now the singular goal is to find where the Master of Coin keeps his stolen gold hidden. I have no means to carry them and take Tyrion Lannister to join up with me in a single night. So I blend in with the shadows, creepily floating just half a feet above the ground. Even if someone was looking, they would either scream their lungs out, or even if they tell someone, who would believe them? The Silk Street was where all the high-class brothels were. Petter Baelish owned most of them. His competition was curbed by the gold cloaks he served and the powers he had as the Master of Coin. I make my way to the biggest building I see. His wealth was indeed hidden in plain sight. Just in his room at the ground floor was a hidden safe. That's it, I could only say. My X-ray vision coming in clutch as I viewed the safe from the other side of the street. It was still weird how naturally I could use my powers. In most stories, the MC has to go through several missions allotted by this system to start reaping rewards, but I had been dropped into this world with all my cards already active. There was no training arc or meeting some important character bullshit. The greater force at play here just seemed to have dropped me in Westeros to wreak havoc and fuck shit up. Not that I would complain. This was Act 2. Wait, Aemion is looking. I turned around to where I sense another presence. The night was dark, and the silhouette at the other end of the road would barely be perceptible to anyone, but I could see it. It was a woman, tall and slender, wearing red. Wait, it's the clothes of a red witch. Shit, it's Melisandre. I could see her clearly enough from almost 50 meters apart, but she was looking at me too. How she should be in Dragonstone, in Stannis' ear and his pants. She looks at me, a smile appearing on her face. It was warm and gentle, her eyes almost fanatic with devotion as she takes a step forward, slow and precise. This was not supposed to happen. Had my presence changed the course of the world? Either way, I do not want to associate with such zealots. She kept walking towards me, every step calm, but her face was anything but. She was weeping. What the fuck finally came close enough to the point her face was clear. I stopped floating a quick glance at my surroundings. The gold cloaks are fucking sleeping, these good-for-nothing freaks kept looking. For a few awkward and uncomfortable moments, the world seemed to have stilled as the crickets stopped chirping. It felt as though only the two of us existed right about now. Then she knelt. Azar Ahi, I am at your service, she spoke, her voice filled with fanaticism. Chapter 6. I stand Eternal King's Landing, Silk Street, Helios POV. The words had shattered whatever calm I could muster. In that very moment the world had stilled. My calm that I had maintained since the day I captured those blue freaks of cold had finally dissipated, giving way to a terrible feeling of dread that I never thought I would have to feel again after discovering my powers. The wide empty street felt terribly small now. I had countless hearts dance since the day I entered this wretched world, but it was mine that was dancing now. My eyes perhaps gave away my feeling of utter shock as I saw the witch's smile widen ever so slightly, or perhaps it was my imagination. I despised surprises, and this reminded me of that. But now was not the time to be crushed under the weight of mine own heart. I regained my cold composure that I had lost just for one short but terrifying moment. This group of fanatics, the worshippers of Arhalar or whatever it was, were some of the most terrible people you could associate with, just ask Stannis. And now one of them was right in front of me, kneeling. A look adorning her face that made it obvious she was fully devoted to what she was doing. Even a child could see that much. Maintaining my composure, I finally replied, Rise, Melisandre of Ashai, you've served me well. Melisandre's eyes widened. Her smile just a minute earlier had gone replaced by a hung open mouth and a clear sense of surprise that told me this was not the part of her plan, so she had not expected me to know of her. Good, I was not going to let her have this. The reason was simple enough, this world became mine the second I had done it a favor of opening my eyes. Only I could be the winner is this unwinnable game. Yo, know of me, champion of light. The twinkle in her dead eyes had returned, she stank of joy and her heartbeats were ever so loud. This meant the world to this 100-year-old hag pretending to be a beauty. She had not seen my surprised look, the witch was still human, but I was no champion, I was God. You disappoint me so quickly, my greatest witch, do you truly not recognize me? I spoke low and soft. A tone that, while barely audible, left entire room silent. The joy had quickly dissipated as her mind scrambled to make sense of my words, though the twinkle in her eyes had remained. A long, terrible moment passed as she just looked to the ground, a child thinking of an answer to the question of a teacher. Then it clicked, she looked up, her eyes meeting mine, though I would question if she could see my face properly. Arhalar, she muttered, her entire bravado gone from just a few words. I smiled. Do you know why I am here? Do you know why I brought you here? I asked her. Fire, you showed me the visions. I do not know what to say, Lord God. Seeing her in such an astounded state was so entertaining. I could never be bored of this. I am here, Melisandre. I reached and held her chin up, looking at her with my most honest and gentle smile. We have so much to fix. I hovered over the air, floating slowly away. She looked at my back for a few moments before following closely behind. This is the first time since I gave fire to the first men have I appeared in a physical form. I have limited the extent of my powers so as to not completely burn this world. Melisandre stiffened. My true form is one that which cannot be handled by this lowly world. But it was a necessity. I have left man to his own devices for far too long. Whether to burn the world or save it is entirely your decision, for this world is yours, and its red priests utterly at your command. Melisandre spoke passionately. These zealots were so desperate for a daddy figure, it was repulsive. Mine to command are they, Melisandre? I asked in a low, almost amused voice, as though I was saying something contradicting. Which I was. Melisandre stiffened again, her heart had never stopped beating fast since my revelation, but now it was almost as if she was having a cardiac arrest. Lord Huh, what do you mean? She asked, her soft, confident voice gone to reveal her true self. A hurt little girl being yelled on by her daddy. I mean, I turned around slowly and steadily with cold and empty eyes, my face so lifeless that it made her tremble. I flew closer. Melisandre stepped back several steps. Explain to me. Why are men and women who claim to worship me? I stooped low, burning children in my name. My eyes glowed blood red. The witch was now frozen in place, her entire self trembling as if she was looking at the abyss and seen death. She mustered all her strength to speak. My lord, they were infidels. They worshipped false ideals and rejected you. They sinned and we burnt them for you. This was bullshit. Magic existed everywhere in this world and it was attached to faith. And this had given this fools an idea, a belief that theirs must be the one true God. That would explain all the things they could do. But that was not even close. Magic resided here and the men and monsters of old had learned how to invoke it, and thus to explain the supernatural phenomenon gods came into the picture. But I would not waste my breath to explain it to a zealot. See, Melisandre. Do you believe in my absoluteness, my omnipotent might? Of course, Lord, you reign supreme, the creator and the taker. We are all yours. And yet you burn people alive for choosing to worship someone else. Tell me and be true. Does you think your God to be so petty, so insecure that he demand burnt children? My eyes grew brighter, the tightening of my muscles shaking the ground underneath. All her face had drained of color, she looked about as pale as a white. Much to my amusement, no wonder Homelander had always scared people so often. This power had felt good. I spoke again. Who told you that I needed dead and burnt corpses? I had given men the right to choose and they did. Why did it offend you? Tell me. Everything that occurred since my arrival in this chaotic world 3 days ago. Go on, humor me. I looked at her miserable face, almost on the verge of tears. It was truly pathetic. My lord. She uttered 7 days ago, the dying flames in the temple of. You burned again, brighter and stronger than in known history. All of us got visions of your arrival, so we came here to serve you. We thought it was you, champion, you had finally sent. So there are more zealots here then. Well, how TF did they make it here in just 7 days from Ashai, and I have been here only for 3. Well, I must maintain myself. I continued looking at her with empty eyes, my face demanding more as she looked at me weakly, cowardly like a wounded puppy. We sailed to King's Landing the very next day. The fires appeared in the ship too, but left none burned. The ships moved abnormally fast thanks to your grace. The monsters below the waves singing to us as we did. We came here for you, looking for you here. The monsters singing to them and the ship moving abnormally. That is indeed something, but now was not the time to ponder. There were more of these fools and they had a ship, just what I needed. You have failed to serve my purpose, and that is why you are here. I spoke. Letting this situation slip was not an option. The false mask of godhood and divinity must be maintained. The Red Witch was weeping now. She had just known a century too late that her life's work had greatly scorned the god she had been pretending to serve. Hush, hush, my child, now is no time to weep. I pick her up to her knees. Do you remember when I saved you? A little girl so lost and so hurt, she cried harder. Please forgive me, my lord. I was not. I cut her off with a finger to her lips. Yes, but it was not your fault, not only your fault. But I do not regret saving you that day, my child. Your devotion, while full of sin and many wrongdoings, was still in its truest sense honest. She looked at me, really looked at me, her eyes still watering and lips still quivering, looking at the hurt beauty. My stone heart cracked for a moment. Then I went in for a kiss. She closed her eyes as I put my hands around her waist in a tight embrace. She accepted my kiss, returning it with even more passion than mine own. As our tongues became one and her body released dopamine, and the stench of love overtook her adrenaline, I took her into the sky. Before Melisandre could comprehend what was happening, I pressed my hands around her waist tighter. There was a satisfying crunch as I accelerated at near hypersonic speed. She could not even scream out in pain before she began burning, flying through the atmosphere. In speed such a delicate mortal body was not meant to handle, and so the Red Witch was fire and ash. United with her lord now? If he existed. I slowed down as I reached the thermosphere, my clothes and gold too eviscerated. Then I looked down at the beautiful world beneath me, the world of a song of ice and fire beneath me. Mine, Chapter 7, They Are Watching. Helios Pav, the killing of the Red Witch had brought me a strange satisfaction and a strange sense of peace I had not felt before. It was more satisfying than the killing of the White and his motley crew. Maybe it was the fact that I had seen her scared, that I knew I was her absolute superior and to her a god. But I was not done yet. The witch had said there were more of the zealots here on a ship. That last part made all the difference. This was an opportunity too good to waste. I needed a ship and the world needed less crazies. I looked down below, this tiny city filled with the vile stench of people. It was asleep, unaware of what is about to befall them. I had half a mind to stop thinking and use my powers to see the extent of them. Turn it to ash, but that would only give me a few moments of pleasure. City annihilation can wait. I needed that ship. I flew down towards the port where all the ships were docked. I hovered 300 feet in the air looking below at the ships, then using my X-ray vision I spotted it. It was the only vessel still awake. The freaks had not slept yet. I hovered down, my naked body moving unnoticed by anyone. Soundless and smooth, I flew to the mast of the ship. They were all inside, waiting so eagerly for a messiah. Well, I was here and I would liberate them now. There were 17 of them in all, no gods. The captain too was one of them. All of them were seated in a circle, at least the 9 priests. The others were in their rooms awake still. The red priests were chanting words, probably for me. Then I land on the empty and lone part of the ship. This vessel was big, a trading galley, big enough for at least 80 men. This would do just fine. I take one last look through the rooms. Most were filled with books and adorned with potions. There were a few weapons, swords and daggers and shield, but more importantly there was gold, more than I had currently. I then make my way towards where the witches were. It was time for a witch hunt. The captain was with another sailor inside his cabin. I float towards them, a silent breeze. He was speaking about something that made me listen. This has never happened before, Kyan. Those things were singing. They followed us till here. I do not like what's been happening here, he spoke, voice panic-stricken. The singing sea monsters Melisandre had told me about, they followed the ship here. Confusion had entered my mind. I knew not much about this world, but singing sea monsters were not a part of it. I'm scared too, but there are greater forces at work. The Lord of Light has made his presence known and magic has returned. We have to get used to these things now, and we must pray. The fellow sailor spoke, trying and failing to sound certain. Magic had returned, but it was before I even showed up here. What is that supposed to mean? Still, I don't like any of this. These were the most terrifying moments of my life. I thought I would die at any day. I tell you, I am getting too old for it, and I certainly don't have the spine for it. I tell you, I plan to retire as soon as I get home. The captain gave a humorless laugh as he poured him and the other dude a drink. Here's to the new world and the return of grumpkins and snarks and mermaids, the captain spoke. The sailors smiled and cheered as well. They gulped down their wine as I waited. I was going to give them the mercy of the final drink. As the men gulped down the last of the wine in their cups, I opened the door with a slow push. The men paused looking at the door. Hugo Tilda the pilot cut off as he saw me floating in his room, my eyes burning red. They froze. They just stared, their minds failing to catch up with their eyes. I turned towards them slowly. Then their hearts began beating slightly faster as their eyes widened. Wa Tilda, I lasered the sailor in half before he could finish. It was quick, simultaneous, even and more importantly precise. Less of a mess than I had expected as his upper body slipped away, cut in half so cleanly that it felt like cutting butter with a hot knife. There was silence for a singular second as I then turned around, diverting my attention to the old stinking captain. He too died cleanly. I showed him mercy as I lasered a hole in his head. These two were dead and now 15 more to go. I turned again, this time in no mood for games. Killing was still new to me, but it did not feel as such. The taking of life did not bother me like I had expected it would. There was no hesitation or guilt rising up in my gut. Perhaps because these men deserved their fate, so I told myself, but what I did feel rising up was my excitement. Less exciting than with the spectacular end of the Red Witch, but still exciting. I quickly scanned the ship. The circle of priests was there in the largest cabin of the ship. They could wait. I moved at blinding speed, faster than a flash, as I quickly opened the other cabins. I was merciful. They perished before their minds could comprehend their situations. All the other men beside the circle of 9 witches was dead, systematically killed, too fast and too precise to be cruel. More merciful than I ought be perhaps, but that would require effort. These scums were not worthy of the effort. I stopped flying, landing softly on my bare feet. Only 9 more to go, I thought as I walked to the cabin, listening to their prayers. After a few short steps, I finally stopped before the cabin. It was bigger than the rest. Made for group prayers, I surmised, or for perhaps royalty or the leader of this particular group. I opened the door, slow and calm. It opened with a long creak as I was revealed to the priests before me. They all had turned to face me, my glowing bright eyes staring down at them. A barely perceptible smile wearing my face. A moment passed, long and terrible. I looked at all their faces, shock, fear, numbness, and even the embers of worship. They were all like Melisandre, wearing that red necklace to look young and forever beautiful. I would have 9 of them now, a blessing to my most loyal followers. A red, terrible light escaped my twin eyes yet again as I dismembered the corpses before me. In a mere second, the entire crew was reduced to bits and pieces as I worked my charming magic. The gore was truly glorious. I marvel at the moment, my beautiful creation, for a long minute as blood spread over the floor. This was strangely satisfactory. After breaking from my stupor, I looked around the mess left for me to clean. The euphoria vanished quickly after that. I used my super speed to drag all the bodies in one place. There were 37 pieces of flesh for me to throw. One by one, I carried the corpses to the far end of the Blackwater Bay. They would be consumed by the fish before being recognized. Once the deed was done, looked at my ship, truly looked at it. The blood still needed cleaning, but that could wait. I needed to see my rewards first. I walked towards the table where I had kept the 9 necklaces. They were truly gorgeous. The faint red glow was attractive. How many did the witches need to burn to bless this jewelry with the gift of immortality? Would these still work on someone else beside their intended user? Well, that would not matter, they would still sell for good money at least. I reached out for one which was adorned with gold, unlike the rest which had worn silver. As I went to hold it, the ruby shone brightly before erupting into red flames which made me quickly move back. That was not supposed to happen, I quickly muttered as the red falmas erupted from the other necklaces as well. They were dancing, not gently but violent and strong. Soon the entire room was covered in flames. Then they took shape. The shape was humanoid but tall, sprouting wings like that of a dragon. It had horns and a single large hole where his heart should have been. It looked at me, though I saw no eyes of the figure. Then to make things worse, it spoke, a screech more calmer than the white I had killed, but deeper. I felt shivers down my entire body as it spoke. You are not meant to exist, alien. Just then a bright flash of light erupted again from the figure. As I shielded my eyes, a massive explosion erupted. The entire ship, the entire dock, and even few main street buildings got consumed whole. The dark, empty sky brightened by the light. It was like the sun rising again. The flames of the explosion reached 1,000 feet high as my body had been in the center of the disaster. My mind went blank, a single thought crossing my mind as flames surrounded me. I am being watched. Chapter 8. The world shifts. Helios Pav. A sudden burst of flame had run its course. The explosion was not natural, done by a force, a being that I could not assume to be anything other than the wretched Lord of Light himself. So that God is a demon after all, but if one of them is real, then all of them are real. Magic resides not only with the red priests. The world around me was utterly devastated. The flames, thankfully, had not done much damage to me. But the world around me said otherwise. The entire dock and a portion of a city was gone. The fire had disappeared after the initial blast. Almost like a grenade, I floated far above any man could see in the night. Looking down below, I saw hundreds of homes gone, at least 1,000 dead. Thankfully, the fires had not preserved. The city was awake. As I stared below, my skin was blackened, not charred, but I needed a bath. Homelander could come out unscathed from atomic bombs. This was tame by comparison, at least until they ruined the ending of the show. I would mourn for the innocent lives lost had my mind not been preoccupied with the revelations this past hour. As far as I knew, magic has returned. A few days before my arrival, it was probably the world's attempt to balance the new power dynamic. Ah shit. That means every monster here would be stronger. A Thor burden. There were monsters in the sea at this very moment. The so-called gods of this world were real and even physical. One had just tried to kill me, and failed. That was the important part. Arhalar was the strongest god then. The only one who did things, and he had failed to kill me. This world now is utterly fucked without me. Whatever plans I have need to be hastened, for there is not much time anymore. I have to make everything quicker now. This world is tied to magic, and that magic breeds faith. If my assumption is correct, all the gods here are just manifestations of faith and magic. Arhalar was that strong because his worshippers constantly performed dark magical rituals in his name. At least I hope that is the case. It makes things easier. If I am not an anomaly but tied to magic, then I can get even stronger should I acquire true believers. That sounded easy enough, but it was not. My plan had been thwarted before it began. All the fucking ships were gone, all my gold and my horse were gone. I had nothing again. I have been naked too many times in this world, but now there was no time to waste. The city was waking up now, and I had to do something before I lose the only opportunity to make it big. With the Silk of Street not much damaged, I can still take Littlefinger's hidden away gold if I was quick enough. Conveniently I was, but I had little control over full extent of the SPPED yet. Well, no point in worrying too much now. I exhale a deep breath as my absolute focus returns to me. My mind clearing itself of any doubt, any thought. I lock onto the brothel, still closed and undisturbed. Then I move. It was faster than I had ever been before. I was, for any man seeing, invisible. I had disappeared and reappeared instantaneously. The city had woken up, but it was still confused and scared. I break through the walls, reaching straight to Belish's room. Then I looked at the vault and picked it up. All of it. It was almost as large as him, made of thick 2-inch metal. Very difficult to open under normal circumstances. This must be a fortune, he thought to himself again. He knew Littlefinger was stealing from the crown, but how much could it possibly be? If it was an outrageous amount, then the crown deserved to fall. The politicless system of Game of Thrones was very backward, even with the medieval setting. Just a few decent reforms would transform a kingdom to a superpower. But if there was no change in this world in thousands of years, then I could only assume the gods above were stagnating mankind. That goes without saying. The rest of the world was even more miserable. The free cities of Essos had no proper armies, no proper military might, and relied heavily on slaves, entirely on slaves. And worse still was the fact that there was no proper slave rebellion somehow. The Dothraki, presumed to be great monters on the battlefield, were just men, with no armor or shields, just half-naked men riding on horses without strategy, and the world was scared of them. If I recall the lore correctly, just 3,000 Unsullied had defeated over 20,000 Dothraki by just being a big pointy shield wall. But now back to the real world. I took the big vault and took off into the sky at great speed. I was surprised by the fact that the vault had not began burning, or that I was not leaving behind sonic booms while flying. This was new. I flew until I saw the continent of Westeros in its full glory. Tyrion was out of the option now that the city would be in absolute chaos. The reach it had to be, so I flew south at full speed, though I have absolutely no idea where Hornhill is. We have come so far on luck. I would take yet another bet now. Back in King's Landing, the city had woken up, for the first time in its history, not by the warm sun or a siege but a massive explosion. The silence of the night was disrupted first by a blinding flash of light, and then by a loud explosion that had took an entire portion of the city away. Many houses and roads were vanquished. Some gold cloaks, corrupt and ignorant, had been sleeping soundly when a light bright as the morning sun had woken them up. Then they were engulfed by a fire that would consume them whole. What the fuck just happened? King Robert Baratheon asked, completely awake and sober for the first time since the death of Jon Arryn. He had a hangover, but that was normal, and whatever the hell has happened was not. Yo, your grace, the city. There was an explosion near the docks. Varys explained this was for the first time in his life that he had been disturbed so deeply. A feeling that was shared by many in the council. What the fuck does that mean, SPIDA? The king asked again, even though he knew the answer. Before anyone could answer, Robert slammed his fist on the council table, so hard that it cracked under its weight. How? Robert screamed as his council members flinched hard. They had assembled as fast as they could. Even the queen and the Kingslayer were present. All their smugness gone. James specifically was trembling. Everyone noticed that. Nobody knows, your grace. It just happened. Varys gulped again. An explosion doesn't just happen. Surely there were some culprits. Someone that the gold cloak saw suspicious. Renly spoke calmer, his usual charm and good humor gone. Varys wanted to strangle the fool right there. It was Renly who owned the gold cloaks, at least legally as master of laws. But he was the one who had allowed it to become corrupt and useless. Then question every last one. How are we to explain that a portion of the city vanished right under us? Robert spoke. He was easy to satisfy but also easy to anger. Only this time his wrath was more than justified, and he was red-faxed from anger. The Alch. Alchemist Guild, your grace, it must have been them. They all turned to look at Sir Jaime Lannister the Kingslayer. He was scared. They all were scared, but Jaime looked like he would pass out any given moment. Varys could already guess his next words. After all, he was there in the Red Keep when the Mad King had given the order. What do you mean, Kingslayer? Robert asked, though his voice was much softer than before, mayhaps seeing the smug Kingslayer like a scared little puppy had calmed him. Alchemist Guild, your grace, there was wildfire underneath the Sea City. All eyes widened in horror. Be plain. Jaime, what do you mean? Renly spoke. When the city was being sacked. Ares was obsessed with wildfire. He had the chassis of wildfire placed under the city. The horror only became greater as Jaime continued. When my father entered the city, Ares ordered his pyromancer to light the wildfire instead of surrendering like I had told him to do. He would not listen, so I killed him. But I never spoke of the wildfire to anyone. Jaime was on the verge of tears now. What? Robert could only mutter. So this whole time you were called a man without honor for nothing, and you did not even protest. Tell us the truth. Not once. His face grew red again. Not once did you think it prudent to tell us about the wildfire. Robert raged, but there was little hostility towards the Kingslayer at that moment. Sir Barristan, on the other hand, was shook to his very core. He had always believed that Jaime was a dishonor to the White Cloak, but to hear this, all of his feelings towards Jaime was false. The rest of the Cowley present too was too dumbstruck to speak at the revelation. Sir Jaime, they believed, was the smuggest of all Lannisters, and what he had said just now changed everything. Had the fool the courage to speak this before, a fraction of the entire city wouldn't be in ruins, and he would not have to wear that mask of smugness. Varys mused. It was in the end still Jaime's fault in the end. Well, what the fuck are you all waiting for? Get the bloody PYRMNACS now. Chapter 9, The South and the Grudges. Helios POV. Time moved far too inconveniently. That was the thought that ran through my mind as I waited for dawn to finally show up. Travel to the Kingdom of the Reach, the bread basket of Westeros, where everyone was lazier, more of a schemer, and marbled. It was by all means the most powerful kingdom of the 7 kingdoms. Well, it should have been. The full military strength of the Reach was 100,000 soldiers, the greatest single army in all the 7 kingdoms, and they also had the advantage of having full stomachs. The Reach produced more grain than they knew what to do with. They also had a large fleet, one of the 3 great fleets with the Red Winds. By all means, all neighboring kingdoms should have been a part of the Reach by now, but the Reachmen were also the most unimpressive people in the continent, right beside the Riverlanders. Straight bums. Aegon the Conqueror was clever when he made the Tyrells its lord and not the Hightwers. Without the dragons present, there would be a monopoly. Aegon had done the same with the Riverlands. The Tullys were given power. These 2 families were young and not much significant until the Conqueror, resulting in the older houses of the same lands looking down on their lord paramounts. It was clever, but still the sheer lack of presence they had in terms of military power was just sad. They called their men, no, their soldiers, flowers. Such a bottom name for soldiers. No wonder so many were pillow biters, and yet the Reach now is strong under the Queen of Thorns. The major Reach houses were united through marriage, and Lady Olenna was a schemer, clever and cunning, and more importantly discreet. Had I been Robert Baratheon, I would get them under me through marriage to Joffrey so fast, though it would have come to bite me back as Joffrey was a bastard. Now back to the present. I had stolen the clothes of some random merchant in the Hightower lands. I knew the place because there is a tall-ass tower here. I had nowhere to carry my gold, so I decided to just dump it in the sea. It would stay there until I got a ship, which I was going to buy right about today. I had flown into the Hightower Keep, or whatever they called it. The fools never even had an idea what happened. I entered the place where there could have been gold. I knocked the men out before they could even comprehend what was happening. To anyone seeing, the men had just fallen unconscious. The gold was easy to find. It was in Lord Hightower's room. I took a few bag of gold dragons before flying out to outside the damn city. Then I counted my loot. 1,000 gold dragons, in modern currency roughly 5 million American dollars. All in a few bundles I doubt the rich and pompous Hightower would care about. A lump of bread here was 3 copper pennies. Just one gold dragon was worth about 11,760 copper pennies. This only pissed me off more. 1,000 dragons alone could feed all of the starving beggars of King's Landing, quite easily too. I need a ship and a proper fucking armor, something that represented the hero I am meant to be, a god, their savior and liberator. I could only speak as the sun finally appeared in the horizon. Soon, very soon, it shall all be mine, and the people will rejoice as I will give them a land of milk and honey. King's Landing, day after the sun rose at night. YYO, your grace, we assure you. The Alchemist Guild had nothing to do with it. Wisdom Rossart whimpered before the court, soon after Jaime Lannister's jaw-drooping confession. The entire Alchemist Guild was brought in chains before the court. Then who else was it? Who else could create an explosion like that in my city? Robert asked, a loud booming voice that demanded absolute submission. He was more of a king now than he had ever been since the Greyjoy Rebellion 9 years ago. The entire city was on lockdown as the Gold Cloaks tried their best to control the terrified maces. But worse still was the fact that there was wildfire hidden beneath the city all this time. A single mishap and they would all be green dust. The Gold Cloaks, now under Jaime Lannister, were trying to remove the wildfire. The panic had only made everything worse. Your grace, it was not us. The only thing we make that explodes in wildfire. and it burns green, not red. Why, your grace, please why? Why will we blow up our own city, your grace? Rossart wept and begged. Much to the secret amusement of Grandmeister Pycelle, the Alchemist Guild was despised by the Citadel, for the guild practiced dark arts and was the only institute to ever compete with the Citadel. But Rossart's words had made sense, and Varys knew it was not them. He would have known. His position as Master of Whispers was a volatile one. He had to be useful. He had to know what was happening in the world, especially the city. He had to say something. Grace, I believe he speaks truth. He spoke cert. The Alchemist Guild had no real power since the Mad King, their most important chemists, were dead. They could not possibly have been building a secret weapon for the past 15 years without none of us knowing. Then what was the explosion? Robert's fury made everyone flinch. Even the Queen Cersei could not dare maintain her hate for him. She too was scared. He was the king now, the demon of the trident and flesh. A side of him nobody had seen in a long time. Cersei had not seen this side of his, and with the strange look in her eyes it looked as though she desired more. Varys had to save his skin, his brain working faster than ever before in his life. He thought of something, anything that would be of use, then it clicked. Grace. I believe it had something to do with the Red Priests of the Lord of Light. Varys spoke. What Robert's words were strangely devoid of emotions. Grace, I had informed the council yesterday about the arrival of over a dozen Red Priests in King's Landing. They are sorcerers who follow dark arts and burn the worshippers of other faiths for their lord, Varys proclaimed. He had no evidence, but he hated magic and he hated the Red Priests. A terrible memory of his past resurfacing as he spoke. Do you say such things with legitimate evidence, Spider? Thoros of Mer countered. He had reason to be worried. He was a believer of that cursed religion after all. No, I do not. Varys spoke, clear and confident. He continued before the Caine could speak. But is it not suspicious that once the witch show up by the dozen on our shore, a few hours later the section blows up in red flames in the deads of night? The court gasped. Fear seeped through. He noble ladies present. That proves nothing. Thoros countered, just speculation. The followers of the Lord of Light do have the most association with fire. They burn infidels like all the people of Westeros are in their eyes. They are also known to partake in dark magic rituals in Ashai. It would be completely reasonable to assume that they had come here to sacrifice as many infidels to their evil god. The entire court had gone dead silent. Even Thoros looked hesitant, further sealing his fate. Grace, I believe that after they burnt the docks they have either left or, Varys trailed of sounding and looking scared. Or what? Baelish spoke, trying to sound confident but failing. Or they have gone into hiding, bidding their time to repeat the same atrocity again. Varys spoke, terror visible in his face. He believed what he said though he had no evidence. That was a bomb going off as panic and fear erupted across the entire court. Even Renly and Cersei could not help but be shaken at his revelation. Robert got up. Guard sees Thoros now. Chapter 10. Friends in Holy Wars. Helios POV. I rode out on the new horse that I had purchased. It was a good ride. Had to purchase a few chests and unnecessary commodities. A rich merchant can't just walk around alone in these parts and not draw suspicion. Interesting thing here was the fact that I wore purple. Only nobles could wear purple, that is good and all. But there was nobody around here who was willing to sell a ship. Some were, but those were the ones who were going to build the ship. And that would take time, something that I could not waste, knowing the fucking G-sods of this world wanted me dead. With that I was half certain of the fact that I probably would be attacked again, most likely at the sea. I still recalled the words of those priests. They had spoken about sea monsters following them here and singing to them. The next attack would be at sea probably. But if a god could not do shit to me, sea monsters are not a threat. Even though all of this is very spooky, it is my first time doing all this. I had to get a ship quickly, but that was not possible now, so perhaps I have to suck it up and look for an armor instead. Walking through this city was a positive experience, all things considered. The architecture was old. That came with being the oldest city in the continent. There were also far too many key locations than a city beside the capital should have. The center of knowledge and faith were both located here. The citadel and the Starry Sept. It was a cobblestone labyrinth. I entered a dense, structured maze of narrow streets, not the best idea for nobles to wander of alone, but misfortune shall strike the man who engages with me. Anywho, my super senses that I had grown to tolerate would warn me ahead of time for incoming trouble. The narrow streets were bustling with public markets, all paved in clean stone. The smell was distinctly pleasant. This is what King's Landing should have been. Many sellers had tried to get my attention towards their shops, seeing me in a noble attire, but I was there to buy something else. The whole city was divided in two by a river. I did not even know where to look. So I looked for the best place to get information. An inn, riding for a short while longer, I finally found one. I gave my horse to the stable boy, tossing him a gold dragon in the process. The boy's eyes widened at the realization he was holding a gold coin. Gathering his senses quickly, he rushed to take my horse, gently holding it like a father holding a newborn. Throwing gold away like that is not the best idea, but since gold is all I have, that's all there is to it. Besides, a god does not fear consequences of his actions. Anyone who would dare try something would just end up seeing the sun up close. As I make my way to the inn, opening the door slowly in my traditional creepy way. All eyes turned to look, and for one moment they all fell silent. My cloak, deep blue embroidered with silver thread, caught the fire light. I stepped in, my polished leather shoes untouched by the mud. "I am so fucking cool," was the only thought that went in my mind as all the men having casual fun a heartbeat prior seemed to straighten up. I looked at the innkeeper, whose eyes brightened at my presence. This was a local inn, and I to them was a big shot. The innkeeper rushed towards me as I spoke loud and clear, "All drinks on me," she gasped, and soon the entire place erupted in cheers. Just a moment prior some of them were staring daggers at me. They thought I had not noticed, but I had. And I remembered. I made my way not to the lone table the innkeeper was pointing me to, but to the place where an old man was seated. He looked to be at least mid-50s. The clothes in the castle forged steel with him telling me that the man was a knight, too well dressed for a commoner and too undressed for a lordling. He seemed taken aback my casual way of patting his back and taking the seat right in front of his. "You lost, my lord." There it was. He said my lord, not M-lord. He was of high birth and a knight, therefore probably trustworthy. Well, I had to shoot my shot. I was lonely as hell in this place. Traveling across a continent at all was entirely new to me. Besides, a poor man grows ambitious when given more, and a rich man is rich after stepping on people to get there. A middle-class folk remains middle class. Being old also tends to crush ambitions. "No, just lonely," I spoke with a calm, casual manner that most use when talking to a friend. "You mind if I join you? You look lonely too." I will pay. That made him relaxed. As he took another gulp of the local ale, I ordered the best stuff they had for the both of us. That got a smirk on the old man. "What would be your name, man?" he asked. "Helios of Troy." "And yours?" I answered. I could still hardly believe my own bullshit at this point, but it was still fun. "Luther, a knight of the Reach," he answered. He was old but decently built, at least for this world. I had noticed the average man here was like 55 to 57, the average Joe at least. This man in front of me was 510, benefits of being well-fed, I suppose. He had a wrinkled face and old soft voice. "I have not heard of a Troy before, my lord, and you don't look to be a foreigner," he answered. Time for random bullshit go. I had not heard of a Seven Kingdoms either before traveling to Volantes, at least. "I come from a land east of Ashai, a glorious city Troy is, I will tell you," I spoke, looking as if I was reminiscing of home. The innkeeper had brought arbor red and roasted bacon and a well-done beef. We quietly began munching down on our meals. Those was still bland to my American senses, but tolerable. The wine was good, however. "Are you in someone's service then, Luther?" I asked, curious. This man looked trustworthy, could also fight. I should keep him. "No, my lord, currently I am a hedge knight." That surprised me. A hedge knight, a knight but sadder. This was marvelous. He looked more well-dressed than most, but most were peasants. But I could not be too obvious, so I maintained my composure. "Served Lord Heitwer for a while and Lord Isford before." He straightened slightly, almost imperceptible. "Oh, he is a loyal one." I thought. There was no hostility in his voice toward them, but a slight pride. "Even though he probably was removed from service, that is a sign of honor." "I served them for a while before I was given gold and send on the way. Was never really good with a sword or lance." "Middling," he answered, sensing the question before it came. "Suppose you are looking for a new lord to serve then, friend." He looked at me now, really looked at me. His heart became slightly faster. "My lord," he spoke after some time, "he is eager too." I had him. See, I am not exactly in a traditional lord, but I need men whom I can trust. Words were genuine. "I was lonely here. If your plate is not full, then join me. I have great plans and adventures ahead and gold to pay you." He contemplated what to do. I could see the conflict in his eyes. I was not a proper lord and a foreigner, but he had no work. Eventually, after a few minutes, he finally agreed. Good, he was honorable, a decent find. "Eventually, when he sees what I am, he will become fully devoted. Let me tell you something, Sir Luther," I spoke. "What you might see on our journey will be different, let's just say. It will be beyond your understanding of things even, but if you still continue to serve me, you would see the bigger picture. What lies ahead would be terrifying for you. So I ask you again, do you accept?" My words were clear, not a shred of doubt in them. Luther seemed to be taken aback by my words, but he had the mind not to question it. He stood up and then bent a knee. "Accept, my lord." This was perfect for me. "Rise, sir. As for your first task, tell me where to find the best blacksmith in the city." King's Landing. The environment was grim, not like the usual grim is was used to, the regular crimes, the gold cloaks harassing bystanders, but a much more personal one. The Uniter city was quiet and silent. The bustling, overpopulated streets were empty. People were scared and unwilling to leave their homes. The only place that felt safe, was supposed to feel safe, but had done little to comfort anyone. It was the news of an explanation of the recent events outside the Great Sept of Baylor that made people come out, looking for any explanation. As the crowd gathered outside the Great Sept, and eventually the king himself had stepped forward, looking at the massive crowd, King Robert Baratheon, for the first time in a long time, had a fire in his eyes. He was sober, he was quiet. He looked more serious than he had ever been. Stepping forward, he spoke. "Last night, this great city was attacked. Let the word settle in. The blast yesterday killed over 1,000 innocent people when they were sleeping in their beds in the safety of their homes. Nobody could have expected that. There was no way to expect that. But we know who it was that dared enter our city and killed out people." Robert spoke, his voice stable and clear, like a commander stating orders. "It was the Red Priest from Ashai." The crowd gasped. It was the High Septon's turn to speak now. He stepped forward. Anger and fear easily seen on his fat face. These witches had shown up in our city just a few hours before the blast. They had done this to sacrifice Liv to their evil god. The crowd was now in just a full-blown panic mode. That is what those Lord of Light worshippers do. They had burned people who worshipped gods of other faiths. The witches had used dark magic to explode the docks in the dead of night. Many wept from fear. The women covered their mouths. But they are still here, hiding. They have not been caught. They are hiding and waiting to repeat this atrocity again. They have declared war on all the people of Westeros, all the people of the faith. This is a holy war, overdramatic, Renly sighed. The truth is they knew not who had done this. The Red Priests were just highly likely, but the people needed to know something. The city was in a panic never seen before. Some were even claiming that the gods had struck them down as punishment and that the end of the world was near. Some excuse had to be made, a reason had to be given. Reynoldt noticed Baelish looking particularly grim. He had lost his usual raspy and slippery voice entirely. Renly did not care. There was not even one Red Priest in Westeros except Thoros of Myr. He was in the black cells for being guilty by association.